So you think about the entire northeast portion of the country being powered by these crazy expensive, the most expensive way to produce power, nuclear power, and the danger is enormous. And the creation of jobs in that method or the creation of new technology is just not there.
We have a gap in the nuclear issue. We have these 92 reactors, and then the one Palisades are trying to refire, and then 2 they're trying to open at Vogtle. So God forbid it could go as high as 95. I don't think there are any other reactors that are shut that they're trying to revive. Kevin, are there any more dinosaurs they're trying to put back on the road?
Well, down in Alabama at Bellefonte, that's a zombie reactor, has been for a half century, and every once in a while they keep trying to bring that back, but hopefully they will never get away with that.
Zombie reactor. There should be a movie like that. Oh, Night of the Living Dead. That's a great title. And so anyway, thank you for that, Kevin. Now let's look at the flip side. In California, we have rooftops. We have 1.5, somewhere between 1.4 and 1.5 million rooftops in California that have solar on. And this energy resource, if it were a single power plant, dwarfs Diablo Canyon. And we get way more electricity on a daily basis from rooftop solar in California than we do from Diablo Canyon. So Robert Freeling, you're the numbers guy here. You're the designated nerd. Can you tell us, give us some of the numbers and maybe put up some of the graphs I saw on the screen, comparing rooftop solar in California to Diablo Canyon?
Yes, absolutely. And I was actually involved in the Diablo Canyon retirement proceeding and witnessed PG&E make the case themselves that the growth of clean energy in California was going to make it such that by 2025, by their own analysis, they would not need Diablo Canyon. And that message is so revolutionary that when people are told it, they don't even hear it. The environmental parties that participated kept saying, oh, but you have to replace Diablo Canyon. Well, I compare that to someone saying, well, you have 3 cars and you decide you don't need your 3rd car because you never use it. And then someone says, well, you can't get rid of the 3rd car until you replace it. You don't need to replace something you don't need. So we argued in that proceeding, there's no special need to have a set aside to replace Diablo Canyon. Just make sure the clean energy programs and policies in California are allowed to unfold and carried out as ordered and as regulated and as subsidized already. One of the major programs was the California Solar Initiative, which launched the California Solar, rooftop solar, so that it's now as large as it is. About 1 in 9 households in California currently have rooftop solar. And that will probably grow to about 1 in 4 within a decade, if it's not stopped by the CPUC. So this is a crucial thing that activists need to stay on top of. I put together several slides. I sent you one by email in case my screen share doesn't work.
Steve, what do you need? Go ahead and try it, please.
I'll try the screen share here. See if this works.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
How do I get rid of all those other little doodads?
Hit play.
What's that?
You want
F11 sometimes, but
I'm going to get rid of all these things. So let's see. I want full screen. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Good.
All right. So I don't know if I can shrink that. There we go. All right. So one of the ways in which Diablo Canyon has been promoted, I think one of the most damaging things, is a kind of a disinformation campaign to wildly inflate how large Diablo Canyon contributes to the state's electricity and wildly disinflate, minimize what the clean energy provides. And in fact, the narrative has been that there's a slowdown in clean energy. You can't possibly replace anything as huge as Diablo Canyon. So they've been saying that it provides 8.6 to 10% of the state's electricity. And the fact is that when you take into account everything, including imported electricity, including rooftop solar, it only provides about 5.5%. But California does not only have electric generation, we also plan, pay for, and regulate and deploy in an orderly way over time energy efficiency. So if you included energy efficiency, which is huge, it's our largest resource, then Diablo Canyon is only providing 4% of electric generation plus energy efficiency.
And I want to insert here, by the way, many of you are not in California, but we don't consider Diablo Canyon to be a California issue. It's a national issue, because if this is the test case for the industry, along with Palisades, to see how much they can stuff down our throat. And if we can shut Diablo Canyon, it's going to have a massive global impact. California has 40 million people. We have the governor such as he is, and we also have been the leader in renewables. So go ahead, Robert, please.
Yeah, I mean, that's super important. With the decision by the CPUC to agree with PG&E's arguments that we don't need Diablo Canyon, that was going to be the last nuclear power plant in California. So clearing the largest, most powerful state in the country of nuclear power is certainly a huge political and strategic position for the country and the world, especially because we're considered a leader in clean energy. So the resources, the clean resources here are energy efficiency, wholesale renewable energy, which is defined as the Renewables Portfolio Standard Program, abbreviated RPS for short, that requires retail sellers to procure a certain amount of renewable energy in their mix, and that increases over time. Rooftop solar, which was traditionally quite small up until about maybe 5-10 years ago, and then has just entered explosive growth in recent years. So it's becoming quite large. And large hydropower, which all of these, except energy efficiency, technically are forms of renewable energy, but they don't necessarily qualify under the state's renewable standard. So it's important when you say renewable energy to understand these two things are left out of the state's. These are separate buckets, so to speak, of policy. The initial renewable standard was 20% by 2010, 33% of retail sales of electricity by 2020, which we reached and exceeded, and 60% by 2030. And this year, the CPUC, the Public Utilities Commission, ordered all retail sellers of electricity under its jurisdiction to effectively have a renewable standard of 73% by 2032, which accelerates even faster than what the state law requires. Here's the actual evolution of renewable energy in state in California. How do I get rid of this top thing? Is it blocking the label? Here, I'll put it down there.
We got it.
Oops. And you can see that after 2010, it really started accelerating. There were certain reforms which actually required everybody to start moving, whereas the utilities have not been taking it seriously up to that point. This is just in-state renewable energy. It does not, as I said, include large hydropower. It does not include imports. If it included imports, the amount of renewable energy in 2021 was up about here where my hand is. You can see that. Can you see the thing on the screen?
A lot of the imported energy was wind, is that right?
It's all types of renewable energy. Some of it is wind, some is solar. I'd have to go and look on the table. I think almost every type of renewable energy is imported to some extent.
Okay.
And then in the next here, this shows the renewable standard in state plus the in-state customer solar, which, as you can see, up to several years ago was quite small. But in recent times has become quite significant, almost as important as the solar energy within the RPS program itself. Oops. And here is the number of billion kilowatt hours, sometimes also called terawatt hours, from these different sources compared to Diablo Canyon in 2021, which produced about 16.5 billion kilowatt hours. Customer solar that year produced 21 billion. By this year, we're probably looking at closer to 24 billion. Large hydro, 25 billion. The entire renewable standard, 93, and energy efficiency, probably about 95, although we don't have an exact number on that. That's an approximation.
So Diablo is a piker here.
Yes.
It's
So-
not going to grow. It's not going to get more than 16.5.
So I made a different version of that chart showing how many times the energy are produced by the different clean resources in California compared to Diablo Canyon. 1.3 times for customer solar, 1.6 times for large hydro, almost 6 times as much for the renewable standard and energy efficiency combined. So if you add that all up, it's 14 times Diablo Canyon now, and all of these things are intended to continue to grow dramatically over this decade, except for large hydro.
What is the difference between RPS and solar?
So solar energy, if it's bought by a utility or community choice program or other retail seller, counts towards the RPS program. If the solar energy is built by a customer for their own use and not sold to the utility, then that's customer solar.
So the RPS renewable includes large wind farms and large solar farms. Is that
Yeah,
right?
because there are 5 types of renewable energy. We can go back to that. Solar energy, wind, small hydropower, meaning hydropower from plants smaller than 30 megawatts, geothermal and biomass. So those types of energy are what count.
Right, but solar PV is both rooftop and large solar farms. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. And so those are additional, and that's why I put together this
Okay.
table to show the whole RPS program includes some solar energy, a significant amount. So the rooftop solar is additional solar energy beyond the RPS program.
So go down to the next one. So what you're saying here is that in California, the 21.5 billion kilowatt hours in customer solar came from rooftop panels that were owned individually by homeowners. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Well, some of them are owned by leasing entities and so forth. They're different ownership models for rooftop
There's
solar.
some businesses that have solar panels also. So
Many
if you take
businesses have them, yes, but the vast majority is on households.
So if you take privately owned solar power in California, it's bigger than the nuclear plant.
Quite a bit bigger. And the other difference is that it is growing, unlike Diablo Canyon. Diablo Canyon is stuck in this range of, it's not an increasing size. The other resources, customer solar, the RPS and energy efficiency, those are all growing. And that's one of the important things you have to keep in mind of why they're so transformative.
That's really amazing. Nobody knows that. Nobody
Now,
knows
you
in
do.
California that customer solar, that privately owned rooftop solar in both homes and businesses is 0.3 times 1.3 versus 1.0 for Diablo. I mean, that's
Now, yes, but in future
Amazing.
years will be much bigger, much bigger. So,
okay. I mean, that's a huge thing to know. Okay.
so here's the entire resource graph, including energy efficiency in 2021, showing the small slice that Diablo Canyon is. And the majority of electricity is non-nuclear clean sources already. In other words, everything from here around to here, energy efficiency, RPS renewables, large hydro and customer solar, that's all carbon-free, non-nuclear energy. So we've already quite substantially transformed our system. And by
Unbelievable.
2025, you asked me to, show what's it going to be like in a couple of years. It's going to grow even further, more energy efficiency, more RPS renewables, and more customer solar. And if it is not extended, the current plan before this new law that the governor crammed through the legislature, Diablo Canyon was supposed to shut down Unit 1 at the end of 2024. and then close unit 2 by August of 2025. So it would have produced a lot less electricity, whereas everything else would have obviously grown to more than compensate for the loss of Diablo Canyon within the
What
next
is in
2
the,
years.
what's the all other carbon free? What's the all
All,
other?
all other is mostly natural gas.
But that's not
There's a tiny amount of nuclear that's imported from other states. That's all other. There's also a small amount of coal that's from Utah mostly. That's due to be shut down in 2025 that LADWP owns, and that'll be the last significant coal being used by California.
unreal. That's
Here's
amazing.
the forecast growth of rooftop solar compared to Diablo Canyon on the left. You can see the 2021 16,450 gigawatt hours, and the growth of rooftop solar. 2016, when PG&E submitted its application to shut the plant, it was significantly smaller. But by 2019, it was already rivaling Diablo Canyon, and by now far exceeds it. But if it's allowed to grow, this is the Energy Commission's forecast for future growth of rooftop solar under current policy. You can see it will grow far larger than what it is today in 2022.
Unbelievable. That's fantastic. Okay.
So there are a few more things here. Can I
Go
finish
for it,
these?
yeah.
Okay, so this is energy efficiency historically. Again, against Diablo Canyon. So we're approaching 100,000 gigawatt hours of energy efficiency. New policies are intended to grow that even far beyond that chart. This is new energy efficiency on top of that other chart that would push energy efficiency far beyond 100,000 gigawatt hours. This is just new efficiency. These are the resources that have been ordered by the CPUC. 7 times Diablo Canyon megawatts. That's the reliability capacity by 2026. And 10 times Diablo Canyon's reliability by 2030. An important thing to see in this is also how much energy storage, battery storage is being ordered, many thousands of megawatts. So the reliability issue is being addressed. And we're going to have a lot more batteries in the future than what we have now, so that those evening stress points like we saw earlier in September should become quite rare.
So this solves the intermittency problem.
This solves intermittency. It also solves the problem that every day the sun goes down in the early evening, but there's still energy demand that can stay fairly high into the early evening hours. So these 4 hours of battery storage that are being put in will bridge that time. And the last slide I have is countering this argument that we can't meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals without Diablo Canyon. We had a nuclear plant in 2012 shut down. It's almost the same size as Diablo Canyon. And these are the carbon emissions from California's electricity sector, which were 120 million tons in 2008. Within a decade, they dropped more than half with the closure of a nuclear plant. And the CPUC sets these targets for 2030, 2032, a further reduction, not quite as aggressive, but that includes the assumption of the retirement of Diablo Canyon. So nobody really believes who are actually responsible for the policies that we can't reach our goals without Diablo Canyon, because they've already laid out the plan for how to do that.
Fantastic.
So that's it.
Anybody have any questions? I mean, that is really a path-breaking piece of analysis here. The bottom line is that we already get substantially more electricity from privately owned rooftop solar units than from Diablo Canyon, for God's sakes. And in the middle of this, the CPUC is now considering legislation to make it even harder to get more rooftop solar while they're sustaining the continued operation of these apocalyptic nightmares at Diablo Canyon, just like Palisades.
Yeah, so that's after already agreeing years ago to shut it down. So
Right, and then we're in the process of shutting it down.
that's correct. That was already laid out. All the years of planning have gone into what the resource mix is going to be going forward without Diablo Canyon. And so it not only overturns Diablo Canyon, it's going to require going back to the drawing boards and redoing all the planning work that's been going on for years since, assuming it's going to close.
Well, even more important, as Kevin well knows, it affects the safety of the nuclear plant.
Yes, it does.
I mean, they have not been maintaining this thing.
That's
And,
right.
you know, if you've got a jalopy and you decide in 2016 that you're going to get rid of your car in 2024 and 25, you're not going to, you know, put in new whatevers. And Diablo is a wreck. And it's been progressively worse wreck for 6 years now, for God's sakes. There is only 3 years, 2 years, until they've been planning to shut Unit 1. So you're in the process of shutting this thing for 6 years, and all of a sudden, with 2 years left to go, you said, "Oh, I think I'll keep it open."
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it is a recipe, a surefire recipe for a total catastrophe. I mean, just everything else aside, what kind of shape are these 2 reactors in, for God's sakes? Anna Georgie, you have not spoken on our calls. Yes, please.
Hi. Thank you, Robert, so much. This is so valuable and brings us up to date. I have a kind of a basic question, and that is efficiency is so exciting in terms of the projections. But I feel like in this whole conversation, conservation is not used anymore. Is that a political decision? Or, you know, because when people are asked to conserve for good reason, they will. And, you know, we can't continue with the incredible waste in this country and try to produce alternatives that meet that. So I just wanted to hear what you had to say about those 2 terms.
Oh, I think that's an enormously important point. In energy policy in the past, there have been 2 ways to save energy. One is called energy efficiency, which is sometimes conflated with conservation. Energy efficiency basically means you make more efficient machines, appliances, devices, so that they use less energy to produce hopefully the same or better energy service. But conservation is actually reducing energy use, which should prioritize, of course, getting rid of the energy that we waste, which is enormous. I go around, see that they put in all these quote unquote energy efficiency LED lights outside, and I see brilliant parking lot lights with LEDs, and they're on all day long on a bright sunny day. That's not energy efficiency. Turning those off is conservation, and conservation is a crucial thing. And yes, I believe there have been huge political questions around it. And I think it goes back to the trauma. I mean, I'm putting that in sarcastic quotes, so you don't misinterpret what I'm saying, of Jimmy Carter getting on television and telling us we're all going to freeze in the dark and you better put on your sweaters, right?
Right.
And that in some ways laid the groundwork for Reagan's New Morning in America, getting rid of the solar panel in the White House, building SUVs and so on, you know, uncorking all the conservation and efficiency that had been endorsed by Republicans for all of the Republican Party's history up to that time. So they dumped along. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt would be turning in his grave to see what happened to his party on this issue, not even talking about all the other stuff you were talking about earlier. But conservation should be a policy, I believe, of government. I believe it's crucial to bring it back. Not to tell people that we have to go back to live in caves necessarily, but just simply how miserable our lives are made by just wasting energy. Nobody's happier burning gasoline in a traffic jam. That doesn't make anybody any happier. It makes your life worse. Most of the energy waste we have actually materially makes our life worse. It destabilizes our climate. If we breathe in the air pollution, if we got rid of just waste of electricity, we could close all the nuclear plants in the country. It's certain that we waste 20% of electricity without any question.
Right.
I would love to see this brought back into the public domain and make formal policies and target goals for conservation, just as we do for renewable energy and efficiency. Very important question, and I wish it were discussed more often.
Anna,
Thank you.
did you want to say something else, Anna?
Oh, just the average person in the United States uses twice the energy of a German, and the Germans are scaling back because of the, disastrous energy costs and all. And so this is really an equity issue, because when you look at what used to be called third world countries, developing countries, they use very little energy. So I just think that shouldn't be left out of,
No,
a
you're-
Yeah, I
program.
think more than just not left out, it should be a top priority resource. In California, we use substantially less electricity than people in the rest of the United States. Sometimes when that fact is brought up, people will say, oh, that's just because of your nice climate and so forth. Well, that isn't necessarily true. If you went back to 1970, we used about the same amount of electricity per capita as the rest of the country. And in the 1970s, starting from then on, we endorsed very different policies than the rest of the country to reduce energy use.
Robert, just a last comment. It's very similar to water use, right? It's learning and it's appreciating. And the Californians have really scaled back there a lot too.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, I want to thank you, Anna. Ron Leonard, and then I'm going to call real quick. Wendy, I know we want to talk about water, but we may not get to it. We may have to wait a week. But real quickly, Ron Leonard and then Bert Wong.
So energy usage as we presently use it is a waste. And by that, I mean the Federal Energy Regulatory Authority has calculated that 80% of the fuel that is used to produce that energy is wasted in the process. You get it from a power plant. That's a large waste of energy to get to the electricity. Then you transmit the electricity over the high tension lines and then to the distribution system. Only 20% of that fossil dirty fuel is converted to energy that you get it in the last mile. So we're basically having a system designed to waste. And when you talk about conservation, last week when the temperatures reached 100 degrees, people were sent out a little notice that said, please help us out. We have an energy problem. Please reduce the cost of energy. Instantly, they did that. They saved the grid along with 500 megawatts of power that were transferred from battery systems that were powered by rooftop solar. So 10% of the state's energy is provided by, on average, instantaneously, the 1.5 million solar roofs.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I met Bert Wonk yesterday at a gathering. Bert, if you could very quickly tell us what you're into and how it fits in. You're in the PV business.
Great, thank you, Arvind. Great to be part of this amazing forum. Bert Wonk, so I founded Infinirel, which stands for Infinite Reliability, with a mission to make renewables actually reliable. One of the issues that are carved under the carpet is the electronics that we rely on today, in solar, in wind, in battery charging, in vehicle charging, in electric vehicles, electronics. It's not designed for a very filthy, noisy grid. It fails. We've seen failures over 100% per year. Nobody really knows about that. So our mission is to predict failure and therefore reduce failures and make it actually economically attractive before we can scale up solar, wind, and electric vehicles. So that's our mission. Background is I started 14 power management product lines, including the world's first lithium-ion safety chip in 1997. So I know a little bit about reliability. My mission and my appeal to our joint mission is there is one area that I noted just in the chat called microgrids. Microgrids are, I believe, the future from what cell phones did to the landlines on the phone. That's what microgrids are. Distributed cells that are larger than residential rooftop. They're actually community, a whole community that is self-sustained and resilient. It may be connected to the grid, and that shall be optional. It shall not be forced down our throat by the utilities, who are, I'm sorry, rather incompetent to look at new business model to really save the ass. Excuse my French, and I'm really German. So the microgrids are really have an incredible role and opportunity going forward, which we are actually going through some programs with San Diego and some other areas where we can combine locally optimized resources, which is actually beyond solar, also wind resources, biomass, which is coming from oil, I mean, not car oil, but the restaurant oil, the junk, right? Even cow dung, right? You make cow dung to millionaire, right? You can monetize it. You can actually electrify it. All this can be optimized locally, but policy has to change. Not only that, we say, oh yeah, CPUC, the lip service, oh yeah, we love microgrids, comma, as long as they're connected to the utility. Now, Tampa Bay Electric has already seen the sign. The only utility in the entire US, they already own and operate those microgrids. I'm actually involved in this project remotely with one of the potential clients. So one sees it, and I think there's more. One other food for thought, since I have a lot of track record in Europe coming from there, 30 years in the US, but TU Delft, the University in Delft, has already designed the 48-volt low voltage, safe DC direct current, like from a battery, home. It can be done. So I think we have a lot of opportunity. Now, if you choose your next home or your next community, or if you have influence into policymakers, just think about the potential role and flexibility and resilience that microgrids could provide us.
Amazing. That's really great. Bert, I think especially you should be in touch with Ron and with Ray Lutz and
Can I too?
Robert.
Yeah.
Sure. Talk about.
I put my thing in the chat, and then there's also another link for our crowdfunding campaign, which has a little history.
Yes, Bert, you're aptly named. You're our policy wonk, and we need you to your technical expertise combined with Ron and Ray. Ray was instrumental in getting San Onofre shut, and Robert would be really helpful, and we want you to come back because
awesome.
We didn't talk about going to DC. If we go to DC, we don't need inverters, and
bingo.
And that eliminates a huge range of problems. So I never thought of that, and you must be the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. So
I admire this guy. I mean,
yes,
I like to hire folks that are like that smart, so I can figure out a way to make it all
well,
work.
the big mistake that Thomas Edison made. Thomas Edison was not a nice guy, and he hired Nikola Tesla, and Tesla came up with DC, and Edison had promised him if he solved the transmission problem that he came up with AC. If Edison promised Nikola Tesla that if he solved the transmission problem, Edison would give him 50 grand. And Tesla solved the transmission problem, and Edison stiffed him. And Edison never recovered in many ways from doing that. So we know that you'll fully pay all your employees. But if we can talk more about this is a big deal. DC is a big deal, and microgrids are a big deal. So let's pursue this, okay? And so you put your
I put my contact, my corporate email, our refunded campaign, which is a little bit lower tech. We're gonna refresh that next couple of months. There's a lot of good things that are happening in the last few weeks since we moved to Chicago. And then also my LinkedIn profile, someone cares to connect. That's the only social media and connectivity I use. I'm really sorry. I need to sign up. I've got another call.
Okay, well, you'll come back
both ends on both ends. I'll be super enthused to work with the right guys to make the needle shift. So thank you so much for allowing me to air my thoughts.
Absolutely. Okay, Steve, if you can keep us going for another 13 minutes, we'll go to 4:15. I promise we won't go to 4:30 today, but we do have some other people in the queue. Wendy, promised you're going to raise a water issue real quick, please.
Oh, thank you. I would love to. That would be awesome. I did want to say one really important thing about the nuclear as well. But yes, for the water issue, I have my friend Boyd Corbin here, who's running for mayor in Wilton Manors to talk about the ammonia in the water, which is actually a problem in 1/3 of the cities in the country. And but real quick, I just want to just say about the nuclear thing. Like I found a Senate bill, it just passed through committee on 4066. I'll put it in the chat, but it basically it paves the way for energy, the Department of Energy to be supplying the nuclear weapons, basically. So I'll put that in the chat for
There
you.
was at one point in the nuclear debate an alleged unbreakable wall between commercial nuclear power and nuclear weapons, and that is basically dissolved, as Kevin well knows, and Ron and the rest of us. So very good point, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
So I don't know if I think it's in the chat now. Is Boyd still with us? Because I know he might be
I
on
see
another
Boyd,
call.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Boyd.
Let me are you there, Boyd?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Wendy asked me to do 5 minutes on chloramine. So I attended a seminar on chloramine, which was intended for water treatment plant workers to get their continuing education credits. About 20% of Americans drink chloraminated water. Simply put, chloramine is a combination of chlorine and ammonia. Pretty much all drinking water is disinfected by chlorine, which kills bacteria. You add chlorine after you filter the water, because the more dirt that's in the water creates more disinfectant byproducts when you add chlorine. These DBP chemicals are regulated by the EPA, since some of them cause cancer. Bromodichloromethane is known to cause miscarriages and fetal retardation. A couple decades ago, the EPA lowered the amounts of these toxic chemicals allowed in drinking water by 20 to 25%. The intention was for water treatment plants to filter the water 20 to 25% better, getting rid of more dirt. But then someone said, hey, if we add ammonia to drinking water, that will lower these DBPs. Aaron Brockovich calls this cheating on safe water tests. But the problem with adding ammonia to make chloramine is that the toxic chemicals are only temporarily lowered. You need to stop using ammonia a month or two each year to allow straight chlorine to burn off the junk called biofilm. It's a slime that lines the insides of the water pipes. During these so-called free chlorination burns, which is going on right now in Fort Lauderdale, the levels of these DBPs jumps to 5 or 6 times the EPA allowable levels. If you do the math, that's even better to just not use ammonia at all. But here's the thing. Testing for DBP chemicals are never done during free chlorination burns. It's a little loophole that only exists in this country. Pregnant women should not drink unfiltered water during these free chlorination burns. Chloramine creates 2,000 chemicals, and we only have names for 600 of them. We have no idea how these chemicals affect people or pets. But DBPs are not the only bad thing about chloramine. First, it greatly weakens the ability for chlorine to kill bad bacteria, such as Legionella, which means you're more likely to get sick from bad water. It kills fish and makes your dogs puke. But it is hell for people with sensitive skin. Their hair can fall out in patches and scabs form on their heads. It causes rashes on babies, etc. It's also bad for rubber O-rings and bathroom or kitchen faucets, ice makers, water heaters, and most any machine that touches water. Brass, copper, and lead pipes are corroded by chloramine, and then you drink it. If the chlorine to ammonia mixture isn't just right, I think it's 5 to 1, then you create another chemical, and that's not good. The ammonia never fully mixes with the chlorine, so there's always some level of free-floating ammonia in our water lines, which happens to be the most delicious food for bacteria. In Fort Lauderdale, if Fort Lauderdale signs the $635 million contract in 3 weeks to privatize our tap water, then the for-profit finance company in charge of our water treatment plant has no incentive to stop adding ammonia for the next 30 years, since it's cheaper than filtering our water properly in order to pass EPA safe water tests. There's one good thing about chloramine. It lasts longer than straight chlorine. So if you're in Colorado and you need to move water down a 200-mile pipe, chloramine is good. In every other way, it is bad, maybe very bad. Autism cases have gone way up over the past few decades, which is around the same time chloramine has become widespread. Coincidence? I don't know. There's my 5 minutes on chloramine. Any
Thank
questions?
you very much. Will you put your contacts and all the other important references in the chat? We really appreciate it, Boyd, and we hope you're successful in your campaign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And
You will-
Wendy, thank you for bringing us that.
You will see cities that are trying to figure out what to do, what is the correct way to do this. Well, I negotiated with New York City over 2 decades ago to do the first step of the fix, which is to use UV lights before you then finally chlorinate the water for the long run into the pipes. Their long run is from the Catskill water duct, which is 3 hours drive from 45% of the water coming from the Ashokan Reservoir down to New York City. So it can be done, it should be done, it will be done, it is being done now, and we have the solution. We're just not implementing it. It's stupid.
Why don't you guys get in touch with each other? Please.
Yeah, in Fort Lauderdale, we've discovered that using ozonation and carbon is the best way to filter water. And then if you do that, you don't need to use ammonia.
Well, good for you. Excellent. So let's hear it. Absolutely. Let's use that. Ron, you guys should be in touch. Thank you so much, Boyd, and thank you, Wendy. Ray hasn't spoken. Then we're going to go Dorothy, Jeffrey, and Justin, and we're going to be out of time. Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Sorry I couldn't make it earlier, but this thing about the energy, I wanted to jump back to real quick.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I did research was these darn cable boxes that are all over the place by probably the millions in California. And they sit and run 24 hours a day. Even if you have them off, they get hot. You can put your hand over and feel it. This is just a waste of energy. And I calculated that we could save a whole nuclear plant just by making these cable boxes more efficient. If you have one, turn it off by unplugging or turn the switch on, not on the box. That doesn't turn it off. You have to unplug it or turn a switch on the wall that's connected to it. This is a kind of waste that there's really no excuse for these cable boxes to be so, I mean, maybe they have stock in the energy companies because people don't realize how much they're wasting with these cable boxes, and that could easily go away. Okay, thanks.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's not going to affect Pornhub, right? So people aren't up in arms. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it won't affect this Zoom call. That's only if you watch TV. But how many people leave these things on? Everybody leaves it on because they want to have instant on. And why do they have the thing run? So they can monitor what you're watching and when you're turning your TV on and stuff. They want to monitor you. So you got to turn these off. Thanks.
A $5 timer will solve a lot of problems.
Yes. All right. Well, listen, Ray, that's a big issue to raise. Absolutely. Okay, Dorothy, Jeffrey, and Justin, and then we're going to go. Dorothy, you with us there?
All right, so.
Oh, you're muted now. We can't hear you.
Now we're there?
Yeah.
Am I unmuted? So I wanted to ask our microgrid friend there, Bert.
He's gone. He
It'd
left.
be interesting to see how Tampa Bay does in this hurricane with the microgrids.
All right, we'll watch that.
And if you guys remember the last Maria, the hurricane in Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
actually Ted Lieu wrote a bill about solarizing Puerto Rico because I had called him and I called a couple other people and said this would be a beautiful test case. There's no reason to be having all these power poles in Puerto Rico up and down the mountains because they're just going to blow the next time there's a hurricane. And of course, that's exactly what happened. So now Puerto Rico is without power again. And I asked Ted's office, are they going to resubmit this bill? And hopefully he will. But
Absolutely. You know, this is the second time around.
I was working with Joel about that, Joel, Siegel.
And, the one thing, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but after the last hurricane, Elon Musk gave solar hardware to solarize a hospital. Children's Hospital in
Yeah,
San Juan.
right.
And it was the only hospital going in Puerto Rico for a while. We should find out how it did in this last storm. Jeffrey and then Justin. Jeffrey, very quickly,
A
please.
lot of people are actually privately solarizing their houses who can afford it. People are going into debt. I'm sure all the crypto guys already have solar in Puerto Rico. So,
Right,
Electricity,
and here in California,
electricity in Puerto Rico went up 100% in the last year. It now costs 33 cents. And most of the solar systems, if not all of them, survived this current hurricane.
right, so we need to put the pressure on and get that whole island solarized.
Yeah.
well, Ron, we need a report on that. We need to make that public. We need to see who survived this second, cataclysmic hurricane, and if the solar panels, because there were some solar that went into California, Puerto Rico after the last one.
Yes.
So let's see what happened. Absolutely.
I
Okay. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Ron. Jeffrey, and then Justin.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, very quickly, Jeffrey. Please.
This is the person that did that presentation still here, or is he gone?
No, he'll be back though. We'll get him next week.
What you're talking about me?
Who?
You talking about Robert?
No,
You
Jeffrey,
did that.
he's gone. He's gone. This energy guy is gone. Are you talking about
Okay.
energy or water?
Freeling.
No, I meant the guy who did about the energy for California.
Yeah. So what?
I'm
he's
still here.
gone. Oh, Robert is here, but Mr. Wonk is gone. So what can we do for you?
I don't know if this would make much of a difference, but do you think presenting that presentation to Gavin Newsom would make a difference, or would it just be a waste of time?
Well, maybe not Gavin Newsom, but the CPUC could certainly use it. And there are plenty of energy groups in California that do not know what Robert just told us. So we need to make that very clear, and we need a definitive article, which I hope I'll be able to produce this week. But thank you, Jeffrey. Good point. I don't know where Gavin Newsom is at, but certainly there will be legislators and environmental groups for whom it's a big deal. And next week, hopefully, we're going to have Environment California on with us. So, Justin, thank you, Jeffrey. Justin, you'll be the last. It's 4:15.
All right. So my boss is a grid risk manager. He's been tapped to critique the MIT Stanford study on nuclear.
Yeah.
Against nuclear. So anybody who is interested in contributing to that, I'm putting my email address in the chat, hotmail.com. Okay. And then I wanted to also encourage everybody to think beyond just consumers and politicians for their advocacy. A lot of municipal utilities, which are the other extension of microgrids, in fact, they can set their own rules, whereas microgrids have to follow utility rules. That has been done in places like Anaheim, where Disneyland is, and in Gonzales, California, where a lot of the big ag that built California is. So get creative with the companies, because a lot of them are pissed off at the utilities as well for jacking up prices, for unreliability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And you should be in touch with Robert, Justin, and and Ron. They both have really incredibly important numbers. I want to. Okay, Mary, we'll get you in, and then we're done. I do want to cite Paul Newman here. He is a hero of the planet. His house in Southern LA, Southern California, does have solar panels on it. So, Paul, what's with your cable box? You want to check it out and report back to us?
Everything's great. Everything's great. A minor hiccup, but it's being taken care of.
Excellent.
Other than that, last year my bill was $35 a month. It used to be over 200.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, last one, Mary Butler, and then we're going to go. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for sticking with us. Go ahead, Mary, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I know a few small communities around the world, and one in the United States, where they ended up buying stock into the power company or water company that was bullying the citizens, so the citizens could have controlling stock in the company, and then they shut down their practices because they had the majority vote.
Hey, there's a strategy. So let's talk about that, Wendy, and Mr. Mayor. Let's take over these water companies. This has been a spectacular 2+ hours. Well,
Have a wonderful day, Tom.
we need to take over the Democratic primaries, and then we need to take over the electricity. Kevin, thanks for your great work on Palisades, everybody. Wendy, Stephen, thank you for engineering. We'll be back next week. This has been, as usual, a magnificent hour. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We still have 42 people. So go out and breathe in the air. And I'm going to go out. It's about 100 degrees outside here in LA. I'm going to go get some sun. Thank you, everybody.
102.
And no nukes, yes.
No news.